Section 4 of the Satyricon. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. The Satyricon by Gaius Petronius Arbiter. Translated by W.C. Firebaugh. Section 4. Chapter the 20th. "Pray, madame," I groaned, "if you have anything worse in store, bring it on quickly, for we have not committed a crime so heinous as to merit death by torture." The maid, whose name was Psyche, quickly spread a blanket upon the floor and sought to secure an erection by fondling my member, which was already 1,000 times colder than death. Ascyltos, well aware by now of the danger of dipping into the secrets of others, covered his head with his mantle. In the meantime the maid took 2 ribbons from her bosom and bound our feet with one and our hands with the other. Finding myself trussed up in this fashion, I remarked, "You will not be able to cure your mistress's ague in this manner." "Granted," the maid replied, "but I have other and surer remedies at hand." She brought me a vessel full of Satyricon as she said this, and so cheerfully did she gossip about its virtues that I drank down nearly all of the liquor, and because Ascyltos had but a moment before rejected her advances, she sprinkled the dregs upon his back without his knowing it. When this repartee had drawn to a close, Ascyltos exclaimed, "Don't I deserve a drink?" Given away by my laughter, the maid clapped her hands and cried, "I put one by you, young man. Did you drink so much all by yourself?" "What's that you say?" Quartilla chimed in. "Did Encolpius drink all the Satyricon there was in the house?" And she laughed delightedly until her sides shook. Finally, not even Giton himself could resist a smile, especially when the little girl caught him round the neck and showered innumerable kisses upon him, and he not at all averse to it. Chapter the 21st. We would have cried aloud in our misery, but there was no one to give us any help, and whenever I attempted to shout, "Help, all honest citizens," Psyche would prick my cheeks with her hairpin, and the little girl would intimidate Ascyltos with a brush dipped in Satyricon. Then a catamite appeared, clad in a myrtle-coloured frieze robe, and girded around with a belt. 1 minute he nearly gored us to death with his writhing buttocks, and the next he befouled us with his stinking kisses. That Quartilla, with her robe tucked high, held up her whaleboned wand and ordered him to give the unhappy wretches quarter. Both of us took a most solemn oath that so dread a secret should perish with us. Several wrestling instructors appeared and refreshed us, worn out as we were by a massage with pure oil, and when our fatigue had abated, we again donned our dining clothes and were escorted to the next room, in which were placed 3 couches, and where all the essentials necessary to a splendid banquet were laid out in all their richness. We took our places as requested, and began with a wonderful first course. We were all but submerged in Falernian wine. When several other courses had followed, and we were endeavouring to keep awake, Quartilla exclaimed, "How dare you think of going to sleep when you know that the vigil of Priapus is to be kept?" Chapter the 22nd. Worn out by all his troubles, Ascyltos commenced to nod, and the maid whom he had slighted, and of course insulted, smeared lamp-black all over his face, and painted his lips and shoulders with vermilion while he drowsed. Completely exhausted by so many untoward adventures, I too was enjoying the shortest of naps. The whole household, within and without, was doing the same. Some were lying here and there asleep at our feet, others leaned against the walls, and some even slept head to head upon the threshold itself. The lamps, failing because of a lack of oil, shed a feeble and flickering light, when two Syrians, bent upon stealing an amphora of wine, entered the dining-room. While they were greedily pawing among the silver, they pulled the amphora in two, upsetting the table with all the silver plate, and a cup, which had flown pretty high, cut the head of the maid who was drowsing upon a couch. She screamed at that, thereby betraying the thieves and wakening some of the drunkards. The Syrians, who had come for plunder, seeing that they were about to be detected, were so quick to throw themselves down beside a couch and commence to snore as if they had been asleep for a long time, that you would have thought they belonged there. The butler had gotten up and poured oil in the flickering lamps by this time, and the boys, having rubbed their eyes open, had returned to their duty, when in came a female cymbal player, and the crashing brass awoke everybody. Chapter the 23rd. The banquet began all over again, and Quartilla challenged us to a drinking bout, the crash of the cymbals lending ardour to her revel. A catamite appeared, the stalest of all mankind, well worthy of that house. Heaving a sigh, he wrung his hands until the joints cracked, and spouted out the following verses. Hither, hither, quickly gather, Pathic companions boon. Artfully stretch forth your limbs, and on with the dance and play. Twinkling feet and supple thighs and agile buttocks in tune, hands well skilled in raising passions, Delian eunuchs gay. When he had finished his poetry, he slobbered a most evil-smelling kiss upon me, and then, climbing upon my couch, he proceeded with all his might and main to pull all of my clothing off. I resisted to the limit of my strength. He manipulated my member for a long time, but all in vain. Gummy streams poured down his sweating forehead, and there was so much chalk in the wrinkles of his cheeks that you might have mistaken his face for a roofless wall from which the plaster was crumbling in a rain. Chapter the 24th. Driven to the last extremity, I could no longer keep back the tears. Madame, I burst out, is this the nightcap which you ordered served to me? Clapping her hands softly, she cried out, Oh, you witty rogue, you are a fountain of repartee. But you never knew before that a catamite was called a nightcap, now did you? Then, fearing my companion would come off better than I, Madame, I said, I leave it to your sense of fairness. Is Ascyltos to be the only one in this dining-room who keeps holiday? Fair enough, conceded Quartilla. Let Ascyltos have his nightcap too. On hearing that, the catamite changed mounts, and having bestridden my comrade, nearly drove him to distraction with his buttocks and his kisses. Giton was standing between us and splitting his sides with laughter when Quartilla noticed him, and activated by the liveliest curiosity, she asked whose boy he was. And upon my answering that he was my brother, Why has he not kissed me then? She demanded. Calling him to her, she pressed a kiss upon his mouth. Then, putting her hand beneath his robe, she took hold of his little member, as yet so undeveloped. "This," she remarked, "shall serve me very well to-morrow, as a whet to my appetite. But to-day I'll take no common fare after choice fish." Chapter the 25th. She was still talking when Psyche, who was giggling, came to her side and whispered something in her ear. What it was I did not catch. "By all means," ejaculated Quartilla. "A brilliant idea. Why shouldn't our pretty little Pannykiss lose her maidenhead when the opportunity is so favourable?" A little girl, pretty enough too, was led in at once. She looked to be not over 7 years of age, and she was the same one who had before accompanied Quartilla to our room. Amidst universal applause, and in response to the demands of all, they made ready to perform the nuptial rites. I was completely out of countenance, and insisted that such a modest boy as Giton was entirely unfitted for such a wanton part, and moreover that the child was not of an age at which she could receive that which a woman must take. "Is that so?" Quartilla scoffed. "Is she any younger than I was when I submitted to my first man? Juno, my patroness, curse me if I can remember the time when I ever was a virgin, for I diverted myself with others of my own age as a child. Then, as the years passed, I played with bigger boys, until at last I reached my present age. I suppose that this explains the origin of the proverb, 'Who carried the calf may carry the bull,' as they say. As I feared that Giton might run greater risk if I were absent, I got up to take part in the ceremony." Chapter the 26th. Psyche had already enveloped the child's head in the bridal veil. The catamite, holding a torch, led the long procession of drunken women which followed. They were clapping their hands, having previously decked out the bridal bed with a suggestive drapery. Quartilla, spurred on by the wantonness of the others, seized hold of Giton and drew him into the bridal chamber. There was no doubt of the boy's perfect willingness to go, nor was the girl at all alarmed at the name of marriage. When they were finally in bed, and the door shut, we seated ourselves outside the door of the bridal chamber, and Quartilla applied a curious eye to a chink, purposely made, watching their childish dalliance with lascivious attention. She then drew me gently over to her side, that I might share the spectacle with her, and when we both attempted to peep, our faces were pressed against each other. Whenever she was not engrossed in the performance, she screwed up her lips to meet mine, and pecked at me continually with furtive kisses. A thunderous hammering was heard at the door. While all this was going on, and every one wondered what this unexpected interruption could mean, when we saw a soldier, one of the night watch, enter with a drawn sword in his hand, and surrounded by a crowd of young rowdies. He glared about him with savage eyes and blustering mien, and catching sight of Quartilla presently, "What's up now, you shameless woman?" he bawled. "What do you mean by making game of me with lying promises and cheating me out of the night you promised me? But you won't get off unpunished. You and that lover of yours are going to find out that I'm a man." At the soldier's orders, his companion bound Quartilla and myself together, mouth to mouth, breast to breast, and thigh to thigh, and not without a great deal of laughter. Then the catamite, also at the soldier's order, began to beslaver me all over with the fetid kisses of his stinking mouth, a treatment I could neither fly from nor in any other way avoid. Finally he ravished me and worked his entire pleasure upon me. In the meantime, the Satyricon which I had drunk only a little while before spurred every nerve to lust, and I began to gore Quartilla impetuously, and she, burning with the same passion, reciprocated in the game. The rowdies laughed themselves sick, so moved were they by that ludicrous scene. For here was I, mounted by the stalest of catamites, involuntarily and almost unconsciously responding with as rapid a cadence to him as Quartilla did in her wriggling under me. While this was going on, Pannychis, unaccustomed at her tender years to the pastime of Venus, raised an outcry and attracted the attention of the soldier. By this unexpected howl of consternation, for this slip of a girl was being ravished, and Giton the victor had won not a bloodless victory, aroused by what he saw, the soldier rushed upon them, seizing Pannychis, then Giton, then both of them together in a crushing embrace. The virgin burst into tears and pleaded with him to remember her age, but her prayers availed her nothing, the soldier only being fired more by her childish charms. Pannychis covered her head at last, resolved to endure whatever the fates had in store for her. At this instant an old woman, the very same who had tricked me on that day when I was hunting for our lodging, came to the aid of Pannychis, as though she had dropped from the clouds. With loud cries she rushed into the house, swearing that a gang of footpads was prowling about the neighbourhood, and the people invoked the help of all honest men. In vain, for the members of the night watch were either asleep or intent upon some carouse, as they were nowhere to be found. Greatly terrified at this, the soldier rushed headlong from Quartilla's house. His companions followed after him, freeing Pannychis from impending danger, and relieving the rest of us from our fear. I was so weary of Quartilla's lechery that I began to meditate means of escape. I made my intentions known to Ascyltos, who, as he wished to rid himself of the importunities of Psyche, was delighted. Had not Giton been shut up in the bridal chamber, the plan would have presented no difficulties, but we wished to take him with us, and out of the way of the viciousness of these prostitutes. We were anxiously engaged in debating this very point, when Pannychis fell out of bed and dragged Giton after her by her own weight. He was not hurt, but the girl gave her head a slight bump, and raised such a clamour that Quartilla, in a terrible fright, rushed headlong into the room, giving us the opportunity of making off. We did not tarry, but flew back to our inn where, throwing ourselves upon the bed, we passed the remainder of the night without fear. Sallying forth next day, we came upon two of our kidnappers, one of whom Ascyltos savagely attacked the moment he set eyes upon him, and having thrashed and seriously wounded him, he ran to my aid against the other. He defended himself so stoutly, however, that he wounded us both slightly and escaped unscathed. The third day had now dawned, the date set for the free dinner at Trimalchio's. But battered as we were, flight seemed more to our taste than quiet. So we hastened to our inn, and as our wounds turned out to be trifling, we dressed them with vinegar and oil, and went to bed. The ruffian whom we had done for was still lying upon the ground, and we feared detection. Affairs were at this pass, and we were framing melancholy excuses with which to evade the coming revel, when a slave of Agamemnon's burst in upon our trembling conclave and said, "Don't you know with whom your engagement is to-day? The exquisite Trimalchio, who keeps a clock and a liveried bugler in his dining-room so that he can tell instantly how much of his life has run out?" Forgetting all our troubles at that, we dressed hurriedly and ordered Giton, who had very willingly performed his servile office, to follow us to the bath. End of Section 4.